Right then, good morning, everybody. This is the first time that Torvine has been filmed livecast or webcast and is being viewed live over the internet. So a special welcome to those watching via the internet, wherever you are. As always, please remember to put your microphone on before speaking. I have one urgent item that I've accepted today on today's agenda, which will be dealt with after item 13. And before we start the meeting proper, I think it's only right and proper that we have a minute's silence for our colleague Cynthia Bryan. So will you please all stand. Thank you for that. Now then, we'll move into the meeting proper, and the first item is, item 1 is attendance. There's a lot going around. Item 2 is apologies for absence. We don't have any. And item 3 is declarations of interest, and I'm looking towards Linda.
Thank you, Chair. Members will know that they have to abide by a code of conduct which has strict requirements on them so that they acknowledge any links they have to items before you. Some of those are personal interests, which still allow a member to take part in the decision, and others are prejudicial. That would prevent a member from taking part. Today, I'm only aware of the personal interest that the Deputy Leader wishes to make. That's in relation to item 8. That's in relation to the school reorganisation proposals. And the interests are that he is a governor of both Pontywynydd and Penygarn primary schools, and also his wife is a governor of Pontywynydd primary school as well. Is that correct, Deputy Leader?
Yes, I confirm that that is true. Thank you.
Other than that, Leader, I'm not aware that there are any declarations that members wish to make.
Right. Sorry, Brian.
Thank you, Chair. I do wish to declare an interest in relation to item 7 as parent of a pupil at St Albans High School who enjoys post-16 transport financial assistance.
Anybody else?
Yeah, can I just seek clarification whether I have to do that also, Linda, because I am a governor of St Albans.
I think as governor, Councillor Cunningham, that is just a personal interest. But if I can go back to Councillor Morby's declaration, does your son actually benefit from the free transport at the moment?
Yes.
So you would be declaring a personal interest on the basis that we are merely consulting, going out to consultation on the proposals, rather than making a decision on what they might be. Is that it? Is it a personal interest you're declaring, merely?
Yes.
Fine. Okay. As long as that's clear.
Fine.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Anyone else? No? If not, then on to the Cabinet minutes of the 10th of September. Well, that's a good start, this is. Yeah. Right, minutes, item 4, minutes of the meeting of the 10th of September. I'll go through them page by page. Page 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 8. Somebody move that they're a true record?
Move.
Good. All agreed, Joe? Thanks very much. I don't know about everybody else, but... Right, now then on to item 5, which is the action sheet, Chief Executive.
Yes, thank you, Leader. There is a an update on Action 7.4. I would be obliged if Christina could come down to the chair, because otherwise the cameras can't see her.
Right.
Thank you.
Over to you, Christine.
Good morning, members. Yes, it was an outstanding action relating to the vehicles, the recycling vehicles. If you recall, we brought a report to you some months ago outlining the fact that our contractor had failed to deliver for us, and we terminated that contract and we retendered the works for the new vehicles. But at that time, I was unable to provide you with any financial implications around that decision. I'm pleased to report that those contracts have been retendered. We are expecting the vehicles to be delivered now in November, and all the financial implications have been managed within the department. So I don't need to come back to you with a further report seeking further funding corporately. Thank you.
Christina, if not all agreed? Sure. Thanks so much. Thank you, Christine. So we're into item 7, which is home to school post-16 transfer consultation on changes to mileage criteria. And this is John. Right.
This is a further request for a consultation, this time on the subject of home to school transport. This is another part of the 21st Century Schools programme, and just to make that link in your minds, it relates to the ability of the Council to fund the 21st Century Schools programme, and changing the transport policy would enable us to make... Sorry, changing would make a contribution towards the prudential borrowing for the 21st Century programme. Currently, we provide transport on a more generous basis than we're required to by law. We're starting to get into a large minority now in terms of what other councils around Wales are doing. I think it's about 14 that have moved to statutory mileages. And if you look at section 3, we outline there what the current policy is for under 8 years old, it's 1.5 miles, and over 8, it's 2 miles. The statutory mileage criteria is 2 miles for under 8 and 3 miles for 8. We don't have an obligation to provide transport at post-16, but we currently do. And if we were to change that, that criteria, say it would make a contribution to the 21st Century Schools funding programme. What we're suggesting is that we go out to consult for a period of 6 weeks, and to use the statutory mileage criteria as the place that we would look to change the policy to. You may ask why we're not sticking to the 21st Century Schools programme in terms of the withdrawal of post-16 education, and that is explained further in the report, because we're still waiting for a clear decision on what post-16 education will look like in Torfaen in the future. We don't think it's appropriate to completely withdraw transport at the moment, but in the interest of equity, we do think that if we're going to change over 8 mileage criteria to 3 miles, it would be appropriate to also change post-16 to over 3 miles. Just in terms of scale, currently we provide transport to about 2,500 learners in Torfaen. At the moment, it changes, the provision changes because of individual requirements during the year, but there or thereabouts, this will impact on about 500 learners. I'll leave it there, Leader. Thank you for questions.
Yes, please, Leader. Just to make it clear, really, that we're out to consult on this particular proposal. It's in line with decisions which we already made in relation to the 21st Century programme for schools. Just to make it clear that those pupils who deserve and are provided with transport on medical grounds will not be affected by any changes in the policy if there are changes in the policy. But I think need to remind members that, as with all proposals which have come forward under the 21st Century Programme, that we are not going to be able to fulfil that programme unless we take the measures that we've indicated, both in relation to this item and the following item. Thanks.
Any members want to make a comment? If not all agreed, please show. Thanks so much.
Thank you. At your last meeting, you gave us permission to go out to consult on the proposed closure of Pont-Ywennith Primary School. This report requests a small change. We are still intending to go out to consult as the previous report, but with a changed effective date for the proposed closure. So in your last meeting, you agreed an effective proposed closure date of the 1st of September 2014. We are asking now that that's changed to the 1st of September 2015, and the rationale for that change is shown at paragraph 4.1. Thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Leader. Yes, as you may recall at Council on last month, I asked for, or gave notice really, that I was seeking this change on the grounds that I needed to be satisfied that the consultation was on the basis of the original proposal within the 21st Century Schools programme, and this change of date, therefore, effective date from September 2014 to September 2015 is the reason for this report coming forward. Can I just say that obviously I realise that any proposal to close a school when it comes forward provokes quite obviously and justifiably concern within the community. We will attempt to address those concerns when we go out to consultation. And also may I acknowledge receipt of lots of letters, particularly from pupils at the school, and indeed a petition in respect of the school, proposed closure, and I will be responding when I have chance to all of those letters I've received, so that I can try and explain what the current position is and what we propose to do by way of consultation on this particular proposal. Other than that, I've nothing really to add.
Yes, Leader. It seems that there's one member against, but other than that, the recommendation is carried.
Is Kim Pugh? Thanks, Kim.
Good morning. Trading standards has been identified as a service that should be considered for collaborative service delivery. The case for change really arises from concerns about the future resilience and capacity of trading standards services, were they to be retained within an individual local authority setting. The prospect of further cuts to the budgets of trading standards services will also present a further risk to their vitality and viability in the future. We've been working as a Gwent group to look at taking forward a model for a Gwent trading standards service based on Caerphilly as a lead authority, and we've been fortunate to achieve funding, a funding bid from the Regional Collaboration Fund of almost 400,000 for this year, 100,000 for year 2, and 60,000 for year 3 to take the project forward. And I'm seeking today your approval to progress a project to establish a Gwent Trading Standards Service using this project money to work up the proposal, but with the view that any proposal would be brought back to Council for approval by individual councils prior to implementation.
Right, thanks for that. Well, this has been, there have been discussions around this for, what, a year, 2 years. Anybody got any comments they want to make? Dave?
Yeah. A couple of comments or a couple of questions. The first one is why Caerphilly? What's the rationale behind Caerphilly being a legal authority?
Caerphilly are happy to host the service. They have the most well-resourced existing trading standards service at the moment. However, that's not cast in stone, and should the project team decide that another scheme is better, that would be considered at that time.
The second one, any reorganisation of this nature, no matter how small, carries with it a lot of pluses maybe, but it also has the potential for some negatives. Are there any negatives in it? I'm thinking particularly of staffing redundancy.
At the moment, there are no staff redundancies proposed. What may happen is that staff who are currently employed at a higher grade may be offered employment at a lower position, but they would be protected by 2P transfer terms and conditions. With regards to service delivery, obviously that the governance arrangements and the delivery arrangements would have to be worked up as part of the project.
If I may, are there any financial benefits in terms of savings? I can understand, I can grasp this notion that the service itself might very well benefit as a consequence of a Gwent-wide situation. But what do we, as an individual local authority, stand to gain from this? Is there a financial saving?
At the moment, the project is being worked on the basis of providing resilience, and specialisations can be accepted in one council and used across all 5. However, I'm certain as the time moves on and the proposals bed in, that other savings may well become apparent. And we do have some members of our own staff who have requested a voluntary redundancy, who would form part of that going forward.
Thanks for that. You okay now? Yeah. Who else? Anybody else? Gunaya?
Yes, thank you for the presentation, Kim. I support, obviously, the recommendation to progress with the proposal, but I think members would want to be reassured that all the good work that is now being achieved by the Trading Standards Officer will continue. At the moment, we have an excellent track record. The way that our residents in Torfaen are protected, and I would hate to think that any proposal would alter that. So I would hope that we can give members that assurance.
This proposal is being put forward really to protect that. At the present time, our Trading Standards Service consists of 7 members of staff, so it is very difficult to maintain the full range of services. This should enable us to maintain those into the future.
Thanks for that. Anybody else? Right, thanks very much, Kim. All agree with the report, please show. Thanks very much.
If you would just bear with me a moment, Leader, and just work in the IT. Nearly there. Okay, I'm with you now, Leader. Thank you very much. Okay. This report and the number of others that follow this report are presented to you as a result of decisions that the Council took as part of the 13-14 budget And these reports are setting out the policies behind those decisions, how we're going to implement the decisions you've already made. So the first report is the introduction of a policy for not returning to collect black bins reported as missed by residents. As you're aware, the twin bin collection, there is a suite of bins that we've provided our residents with, 240 litre or 120 litre black bins for their residual waste, and 120 or 240 green bins for their food and garden waste, and then we have the black recycling boxes. This proposal relates to the black bins only. What we have found since we've rolled out the twin bin collection, the number of requests we've had for missed bins has actually increased. We carry out 20,000 black bin collections every week, and we receive, on average, between 50 and 75 calls per week reporting missed bins. Now, that equates to 0.4%. Now, whilst that is very low, we accept that even one missed collection is one missed collection too much. And we are homing in on the performance of our crews, using detailed information that we collect from the call centre and also our tracker system to actually bring that down much, much further. What we have found, if I refer you to table 417 in the report, okay, we've done some analysis of the number of missed collections we receive. And if I can just refer you to the end column there, the missed collections per 1,000 collections. And that is actually based on participation rates. And you can see there, on average, food, cardboard and recycling missed bin collections per 1,000 equate to about 0.4. But if you look at the black bin, it is actually 3.9. And that equates to about 10 times greater calls, the number of calls for missed bin collections on black bins, than we get for the rest of our food and cardboard waste. Now, the reasons behind that, we think that because the black bin collection is fortnightly, when the collection is allegedly missed, they feel that they can't wait another 2 weeks before we collect again. So that's why we think we get such a lot of calls about alleged miscollections for black bins. Under 422, the service was subject to a Vanguard review about 18 months ago, and one of the areas that we looked at that time was the number of missed bin collections we were getting. And the observations that we made at that time, at the study we did then, was around 70% of the missed bin calls that we were receiving were not missed in the first place. So we are getting a lot of calls, but when we actually home in on them, they are not actually missed by the collection crews. Then, in 2011, we've had trackers fitted into the council's waste fleet, which gives us more information again. And we did another study in July and August for a 4-week period, and that is detailed in 428 of the report. And what we found there is that during that period, we had 189 calls of missed bins, alleged missed bin collections presented to the call centre. When we cross-referenced that with our tracking devices, we found that 24 of those calls, of those bins, were actually not present at the time of collection. So those bins were not there for the guys to collect at the time. But then when you look at the remaining 165 missed collections, 58% of those calls were made to the call centre within 48 hours. And we would then go back and we currently go back and collect those bins. But then a quarter of those calls were reported more than a week after the scheduled collection. Now, what that actually means for us from a collection perspective is that we are going back and forth a number of times. And that equates, when you look at it from a financial perspective, which we've highlighted in the reports under 513, our normal scheduled black bin collections cost around £1 per household per collection. When you factor in the missed bins, the number of times we're going back for these missed bins, that cost actually increases to £19 per missed collection. And what we're actually running is an additional vehicle and a crew at a cost of £77,000 to this council. So the introduction of the policy would save that £77,000 because we could take away the vehicle and the crew. But most importantly, through an active communication strategy, we would aim to encourage residents to recycle more, take the waste out of the black bin and put it into our other bins. So if I could just take you to what the policy is. So I'll jump back to the key... right, just bear with me. Sorry, under 5.3, the proposed policy. Okay, so we're proposing that this policy is implemented from the 2nd of December and that the Council will no longer return automatically to collect black bins from properties which have reported a missed bin collection, unless, and if we can go to 533, we will return within 48 hours if we have been presented access into the street to provide collections. So, for example, if there's been roadworks in the area and we haven't been able to get in the street, we will go back for the missed collections there. If we've been unable to carry out a collection along the street for any other reason, if we've had adverse weather, i.e. snow or floods, which have prevented our vehicles from carrying out a collection. What I would just add there, though, is if we end up in a very serious adverse weather position, say, for example, we have a lot of snow and, everything is deployed onto our snow clearance operations, we would look to implement an appropriate collection methodology at that time as part of that strategy. And the other reason that we would go back within 48 hours is if we have missed an assisted collection, an assisted lift collection. So members, I'm presenting that policy for you for consideration and approval today.
Thanks, Christine. John?
Yeah, just to say, Chair, that this is, again, in line with our budget provisions for the forthcoming of the actual year that we're in now at the moment. We've had a number of seminars on the budget. We've had seminars on waste. And we've had the budget presented to Council, and nobody at this moment in time, no members at the moment in time, have spoken against this issue. We also have the challenge, of course, as we know, of a £70,000 withdrawal in-year withdrawal of our strategic waste grant, which obviously adds more challenges to us. And so this is an issue that we're going to have to address. As Christina said, if the reasons why we haven't collected is our fault, then we will pick them up. It's just these issues where bins are not being left out or being brought out after the refuse had gone. So I would commend this report, Chair.
Anthony?
To support what Councillor Cunningham just said, this was taken through as part of our budget proposals for this current financial year. It was provided very clearly to members from members' seminar, for the report back from Cabinet and for Council, so members were clearly provided with the information they needed on this issue. And I think, as John said, this is about protecting the viability of the collection schedule we have, and therefore it's a sensible saving to try and make.
Oneida?
Yes, thank you, Leader. Christina, a couple of things. What assurances can you give me that all black bins will be collected, apart from the group that you've identified, should I support this? I'll go through the list and then I'll leave it to you to answer. 4.25, the trackers. If, as you say, the trackers enable you to identify missed streets, why is it then I have made considerable amount of calls over the last 6 months about missed pickups, and I'm talking here about whole streets, and no one in your department realised they'd even been missed. 4.28, in the report, missed bins you've mentioned about via the call centres, 189 calls have come in. Obviously, they're single calls, but I would be amongst them, and I would be reporting whole streets, continuous whole streets. 24 recorded by crew. I don't know what's happened there. The maths just don't add up, because those 165 can't be all... I realise they're not all genuine, but neither can they be at fault either. I would like to have seen a ward-by-ward breakdown on the problems you've identified in this report. That's it, Christina.
Okay, thank you. I'll answer them in the order that you've raised them. In terms of the first question, in terms of what assurance can I give you that the black bins will be collected, I'll just go back to the point that we made earlier in the report, is that the 20,000 black bin collections are made every week, and we receive about 50 to 75 calls on average a week in terms of missed collections, and that equates to about 0.4%. That is very, very low. But I don't rest on my laurels. You know, there is a lot more work that we need to do in reducing that even further. We have done a lot of work over the summer in terms of using all this information that we have now available to us to performance manage the crews. And we have weekly meetings with the crews. They receive this information themselves, and we performance manage them accordingly to drive the number of miscollections that we have currently down even further. So I will give you my assurance that that practice will continue with myself and also my head of service and my group leader and the supervisors, and there will be very tight supervision around this area generally. So we're continuing to do what we're already doing. In terms of the, excuse me, the second question around where you're saying whole streets have been missed, and your experience is that when you've called in, we didn't even know we'd missed them. We rely on the crews coming back to us at the end of the day to let us know what streets have been missed. And again, now we've got the tracker system, that information is downloaded straight into the computer, so we have got that information much more readily available. And we have tightened up on our supervision. But there are reasons where at times we will miss whole streets, and that is captured in this policy, that if we do miss a whole street, we will go back within 48 hours and collect. So if it's our fault, we haven't been there, we haven't collected, we will go back and return and collect those bins accordingly. In terms of your third question, some queries around the calls, the 189 calls and 24 from the crew stated that the bins were not actually out. So what that figure means is that when they were there, 24 bins were not placed for collection at the time that the crews were there for collection. So they would not be classed as missed bins. If a call came in, they would not be classed as missed bins because those bins were not out at the time that they should have been out for collection. And we inform residents to put their bins out by 7:30 every morning on the day of collection, and to leave them there until about midday, because that is the time that we actually get there for collection. And in terms of a ward-by-ward breakdown, in terms of easiness for the report, I've presented it as a lump, but I can give a ward-by-ward breakdown if you require, and I'm happy to pick that up with you separately, Councillor.
Yes, obviously I support any initiative to cut down on costs wherever possible, but one of the reasons I would imagine that there are more calls about missed black bins and other bins is like green waste and cardboard or wherever you can go. There is always room in the bin, never got that full, but the black bin is usually full at the time of collection. So where people would forego ringing in about, say, a green bin or a cardboard collection or whatever, they won't when it comes to a black bin. I've got some concerns within my ward. I think they've been relayed to you. On Bithway Road in particular, there are two side streets there that are part of Bithway Road, and they had yellow lines on them for a long period of time. Unfortunately, there's been some resurfacing there, and the yellow lines are not being replaced. Consequently, vehicles are blocking the roads, and the bin vehicle can't get there. And I've had phone calls as recently as this morning about that. So the only way it's going to be rectified is putting the yellow lines back, but in my endeavours to get them put back, your department, the Irish department have stated that in their records there never were any yellow lines there. But I know for a fact that everybody living there knows that there were yellow lines down there. Now, if the lorry can't get there to pick up, it could be that they're going to come back once or twice and still not be able to pick up. So it's going to cause a real major problem. So could I ask you to look into that urgently, please? Thank you.
Yeah. In terms of the second point around that specific there, I've been made aware of that recently, and we are investigating that. But if I can just refer that instance back to the policy then, under that policy, we would return We would return, okay, because that is our fault that we haven't been able to get there. But you, in your first point, though, Councillor, you make a valuable point around some of the reasons behind why there are so many missed bin collection calls made with the black bins, is that they are full. We recognise that, but equally we know that a lot of that material that is in the black bins can be recycled. Yeah, it can be recycled. So alongside this policy, we have an active communication strategy. We have dedicated officers whose job it is to actually get to these people, educate them, and actually help them to take that waste out of the black bins into the recycling bins.
Good. Brian.
Yes, thank you, Leader. Just to reiterate, I suppose, that this policy was agreed by Council without reference to this particular issue in February of this year, and I think it's a pity, really, that issues are being raised now. We're trying to implement it in accordance with decisions we've already made. Can I also just say that the Cabinet is not a place for members to rehearse local problems. If we all have instances whereby bins or something else has gone wrong, if we use Cabinet to actually raise those with the Chief Officer, then I think we're not actually doing our jobs. We should be doing the job by raising those issues with the officer prior to the meeting. So I hope we're not going to get into that sort of practice of using Cabinet as a mechanism for raising local issues.
Right, David?
After the comment from the last speaker, I feel admonished. But suffice it to say, in all honesty, I wasn't going to ask a question that dug down that deep. I'm merely confused or bemused by one or two points in 422, the second bullet point and the fourth bullet point. And whilst I'm in support of the proposition, I would like you to explain this for my own personal satisfaction, because you say in the paragraph 422, during previous monitoring under the Vanguard process, it was identified that when inspecting the contents of bins, blah, 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 70% of these bins may not have been missed in the first place. Evidence gathered included in the second bullet point, bins only had 1 or 2 bags in them. Is it the case that if they've only got a half-full bin, they're not emptied?
If you don't mind, Chair, I'll bring Canon along to answer that question. Thank you.
Yes, I'll come for that question. Thank you very much.
Over to you.
Thank you very much. During that exercise where we went and investigate every reported missed collection at that point of time under the Vanguard process, those 4 bullet points just identify some of the evidence where we identified that the bins, the evidence there showed that the bins weren't really missed in the first place. The second point refers really to the fact that the bin was probably emptied in the first place, because the number of bags in the bin did not provide sufficient waste for 2 weeks' worth of waste in the first place that was missed. So what was likely to have happened is that the bin had been emptied, and the residents had then retrieved the bin and then placed 2 bags of waste that they had in the house inside the bin, and then phoned up to say that the waste had been missed in the first place, thereby enabling them to collect more than a bin's worth of waste each week, or each fortnight, each circuit of collection. The fourth point you made a reference to there was the fact it was raining heavily at the time when we were carrying out the collection, or had been raining heavily. Dried up by the time we went to have a look at the collections, and somebody reported a missed collection. If the bin had been there for the whole duration, there would have been a dry spot underneath the bin. So when we moved the bin, we found that the floor underneath was wet, whereas other containers that were around the place, the floors underneath were dry. So it's simple bits of evidence just looking for, just to highlight the fact that some of the issues, that some of the calls that we were getting through did not provide sufficient evidence, if you like, when it was interrogated in detail whether or not they were missed in the first place.
Well, all I will say in response to that is thank you very much for the explanation, but it doesn't seem to me that you rely incredibly heavily on some amateur detectives' skills in this, and it could very well be that 1 or 2 bags were in the bin to begin with, and you have absolutely no evidence to suggest that that wasn't the case. And in the issue of a rainy day, it could very well be that that bin was taken in because it was wet and it had been missed, and it was taken in off the road. I'm only coming up with some plausible explanations, and it seems to me that you were ignoring what might very well be a plausible explanation in favour of some amateur detective work.
This evidence was provided at the time. It also went supported with calls to the crews. The crews at the time reported that a bin had been in that location and had been emptied. So this was supporting evidence to support crews that had actually witnessed or reported back what they'd seen during their collections. So this was just a snapshot of some of the evidence that we found. Agreed, not each individual evidence will be a compelling case one way or the other, but it does provide a bit of additional bits of information, really, to support that case that we know they're not all are missed.
John? Just taking away some of the sophisticated methodology we got for deciding whether a bin was collected or not. Just to make a point that I think is in the report, but not in any detail. I mean, there are really a number of issues why bins are not collected. Some of them are very, very genuine. But there's also some we have a catalogue because some of them are very humorous. I mean, by tradition, we have crews who will pick up your bin at 7:30 in the morning. Now, if Cunningham decides then to change the crew, the crew may go at a different time scale. So they won't go probably maybe till 12 o'clock to that particular area. Now, we've had incidents where if a woman's bin isn't picked up at 7:30, by 10 o'clock she will ring up and say her bin has been missed. And it's not a question of it being missed, they haven't arrived yet. And so that's the type of thing. And there's a multiplicity. I think we could do a catalogue, I think, of some of the reasons we get why the bin hasn't been picked up.
Yeah, I do need to come back in answer to Councillor Brian Morby. I'm really surprised that he should even raise the fact that if we ask the questions and be parochial, that we're not doing our jobs. I find that rather alarming, because I have fact that things haven't been working well in my ward. Now, I can only bring those facts to you. But I, as a cabinet member, I understand that could be in any street, in any community throughout Torfaen. So please, never stifle debate, because I'll always bring the issues that I can factually report here round this table.
Could I say on the same vein, the inference that I hadn't been reporting things prior. Now, I got an email chain a mile long that said that I had been working with the Highways Department and the police or whatever to resolve the issues of the yellow lines at Bithway Road. So, I have brought these things up in the past. What we're talking about now is implementing a policy. I wanted to get the facts clear before the policy is actually implemented. Thank you.
Yeah, I have to say that I've taken this issue up on behalf of Councillor Jones, and the officers are looking at that. But on the issues that Councillor Clark raised, I'm surprised that we're in this situation where streets have been missed and she hasn't been given an explanation for it. I don't know the reason for that, but I'm sure that Christine will find out. But as you said, we could do this outside Cabinet.
Yeah, this is a policy decision making.
Yeah, Leader, if I can just make a point. I accept the comments that have been made, and we will always miss some collections. I'm not going to sit here and say we will collect every one of those 20,000 bins week in, week out. There will be occasions where we will miss streets, and there will be justified reasons why we've missed those streets. Now, this policy actually allows for that and states very clearly that we will respond and go back and collect those bins within 48 hours. And this policy also captures the fact that we are getting a number of increasing calls, which are the way we're managing the demand at the minute is costing this authority £77,000, which through this policy we can actually mitigate and also, more importantly, encourage people to recycle, because ultimately that's what this council's about. Thank you.
So that anybody else want to make a comment? If not, then it's been a good debate. We are losing money, and this policy hopefully will address that. All in favour, please show. Thanks so much. Thank you, Christine.
Okay, thank you, Leader. Another waste report. This report refers to our ongoing tendering process for a long-term organics contract. Members will be aware that we are working collaboratively with Blaenau Gwent and Caerphilly Council on procuring a long-term organics contract, and this work has been ongoing since 2006, believe it or not. We have an interim organics contract in place because we recognise that the procurement is taking much longer than we'd previously anticipated. We have put alternative measures in place to deal with our waste in the meantime. We've made a lot of progress through the procurement process, and I'll just take you through the key sort of areas. The process that we're using is called competitive dialogue, and it's very lengthy and very detailed, and this route of procurement has been stipulated by us by Welsh Government. And through the last couple of years, we've gone through a number of stages. 5.8 is the first stage we went through, which was the invitation to submit outline solutions. And at that time, we had 8 bidders that were shortlisted, and this process was completed in March 2011. We then progressed to the next stage, the invitation to submit detailed solutions, and at that stage we shortlisted the previous 8 bidders down to 3 bidders, and we considered 4 solutions at that time, and this was completed in February 2012. And we are now at the stage where we have 2 bidders that have been shortlisted, and those 2 bidders are Shanks Waste Management Limited and Viridor Waste Management Limited. And both of those companies are able to offer us very competitive solutions to deal with our long-term waste contract. The requirement of our procurement when we embarked upon it was that we would not award the contract to any provider unless there was a valid planning permission in place that allows for the facility that we require to be built. With regards to Viridor have already got an operational facility that they're proposing for our solution, and so planning isn't an issue for them. They have a valid planning consent in place. Shanks, however, haven't, and members are aware that the Council took the decision to refuse a planning application made by Shanks for a 90,000-tonne anaerobic digestion facility at the old Recam site at Pontevelin Industrial Estate, and that Shanks have actually lodged a planning appeal which will be duly considered. So what that has actually meant is that the procurement has actually been delayed slightly as a result of this decision. And the procurement team have really got 2 decisions. One is that they abort the procurement and we wait for the outcome of the planning consent and then re-embark upon procurement. What that would mean is that we would lose the favourable rates that we've had from both our suppliers, and all the work that we have done to date would have been completely abortive, and that work equates to a couple of £1 million in terms of officer time and consultants' fees. Or the alternative is that we continue with the procurement on the basis that the planning position of Shanks continues alongside running alongside the procurement process, and that ultimately would mean that I may be coming back to you at a later date. If Shanks are the preferred bidder through the procurement process, that I may well be asking you to approve a contract without a valid planning consent in place, because the outcome of the appeal may not have been known at that time. Now, we've sought legal advice on this position, both internally and also from Welsh Government, and this situation indeed is not unusual for waste contracts. And we're relatively comfortable that the risks of aborting the procurement are far outweighed by the risks of continuing with the procurement. So the report presented to you is seeking approval from Cabinet for us to continue with the procurement whilst the outcome of the Shanks planning application is being considered. Thank you.
Right, thanks for that. John?
I don't think I can add more to it just to support this recommendation. It hasn't gone without any hitches, this long process, and I think really this is the only way we can go at the moment in time, until such time as it goes through the process. So I would support the recommendation.
Any other comments? If not, then all agree the recommendations. Thanks so much. that.
Thank you, Leader. Again, another waste report for you, and again, a report that relates back to one of the decisions that you made earlier in the year regarding the 13-14 budget. So this report is presenting how we intend to implement that decision. This report revolves around the introduction of a charge for residents for replacement black wheel bins, and also a charge for new developers for the suite of bins that we require for our residents to recycle. It's been noticed since the inception of Twin Bin that there's been an increase in demand for the replacement of black bins at a significant cost to the authority. We currently fund the cost of all those replacement black bins. We've had a significant increase in the number of residents trying to obtain 2 or more black wheel bins in order to avoid participating in recycling. And as you recall, the aim is to reduce the amount of waste in our black bin and to maximise the amount of waste that our residents recycle. We have powers under Section 46 of the Environmental Protection Act to provide replacement additional receptacles free of charges to our residents, which is what we currently do. But also under that same piece of legislation, we have the powers to seek a charge from householders for the replacement or the additional receptacles, the additional bins. We've done some benchmarking with other authorities, both in England and in Wales, and what we found is that evidence from other authorities has shown that when they've introduced a charge in for replacement black bins, that the number of requests for replacement bins is reduced by at least half, or 70%, so the demand reduces significantly. So in terms of our draft policy, which is set out in 5.7, okay. The policy is summarised as follows, that the Council will pay for the replacement of any bin damaged during the collection of waste or for any bin that is deemed to be defective by the waste crews, either through age or other damage. So that is a very important point, because I know some of the feedback I've had from residents is that they are worried around that we do have occasions where the bin is actually eaten up in the back of the vehicle. And under that situation, under that circumstance, the Council would pay for the replacement of that bin, so we would not be seeking that cost back from the resident. Where a replacement black bin is required, so where the resident is asking for a replacement bin for any other reason than that already stipulated, either it's being defective or damaged, then the resident will need to purchase a bin from the Council. And it's an important point that I just want to make here, is that we are not asking the resident to pay for the bin, so the rights of that bin is still with the Council, but what we are actually charging for is the delivery costs of giving the resident that bin. There is no charge, we're not proposing any charge to residents for the replacement of recycling containers, so this relates purely to the black bin only. And we're also proposing then that new developers will be required to purchase all the suite of bins, so the recycling boxes, the green bin and the black bin, at the time of the new development is implemented. And our planning colleagues have indicated that they are willing to put an advice note as part of the planning application into the developers, so that they're made aware of this policy change at a very, very early stage. So the proposed charges for 13-14, for a replacement black bin, we're proposing a charge of £20, and this charge is for any size black bin and includes is the cost of delivery. The charge for new developments for the suite of bins will be £55 for 13-14. But an important point I want to highlight is that the Council still reserves the right in future to change the size and type of receptacle in line with any future waste strategy changes that the Council may wish to make. And of course, the Council would not charge the residents if we did change the receptacles that we want our residents to use. So there's the policy, Leader, and we're proposing that, again, this policy is introduced from the 2nd of December. Thank you.
Thanks, Christine. Duncan, do you want to say anything? Duncan, do you want to say anything about the new development building and so on? You okay?
no comment on that.
All right, that's fine.
Yeah.
John?
Yeah, just I think Christina introduced a few snippets into her report that are not actually written in the report, and that as a result of some of the representations we've had from the public, and I think she addressed those. But I think some of the misconception is that we'll be asking for people to pay for their replacement of black boxes and their brown bins, which get broken. If the receptacle of any description is broken, then it will be replaced free of charge. It's only when bins go missing, stolen, or whatever, then we'll be asking to pay. So I would move the recommendation.
Thanks for that, Anthony.
Again, to support this as part of the proposals that were made for the budget, which obviously recognise the difficult financial times we're in. So that's one of the measures we've had to take. On the charging of developers, I was speaking to the unions this morning, as I do before Cabinet, and they were supportive of this charge, and I agree with that. It's good that we're making developers pay for the extra cost of providing bins for new houses.
Gunaira?
Yes, thank you, Leader. We mentioned about the bins chewing, the lorries chewing the bins up. Christine, is it possible that when that happens, that you could drop a note into the resident? Because at the moment that doesn't happen, and people phone us up and saying the lorry's taking my bin or whatever. So I think that would certainly be helpful. The other thing is about stolen bins. People are responsible, genuinely responsible, I'm sure, for their bins. But there are often times when they get stolen for a number of reasons. I fear now that this might have an adverse effect, the charge, because you've got these jobbos out there looking for bins now just to sell them off cheap. Because that sort of thing could happen. I am concerned about the area around the stolen bins and how we can deal with that. The one with the new development, I'm really pleased that that's happening because, again, we all have to take responsibility.
Thanks for that. Anybody else?
If I can just respond to that, Leader. Yes, the note, popping a note into residents' doors indicating that we've damaged a bin is a very good idea, and indeed I had that conversation with Canon earlier in the week to actually get that measure put in place immediately, because that's something very simple that we can do and proves to be very effective as well. With regards to the stolen bins, again, that's something that we are acutely aware of, and through the communication plan that will run before the implementation of this change of policy, we will be very much encouraging people to mark their bins so that it's very clear to everybody who the bin belongs to. But in the event of a bin being stolen, we would expect that to be reported to the police, and as long as the resident is able to give us a crime reference number, we would look upon that on an individual case and resolve that individually with the residents.
Thanks. Anybody else? Opportunity for somebody to start a small business here going around marking bins. All in favour of the recommendation? Thanks very much. Thank you, Chris.
Okay, thank you, Leader. This is the last report that relates to budget decisions that you took earlier in the year. This review relates to a charge for green waste collection. And what we assumed in terms of income generation from this measure was about £91,000. So that's what we were anticipating through the introduction of this policy. What we did last year, for the first time, members will recall that we suspended green waste collection from early November to early March. And at that time, we had a lot of feedback from residents that they didn't like that change of policy and that they would be willing to pay for green waste collection. But there's been a bit of a change of heart now, now that the residents have experienced that during the winter months, and the rationale behind that decision at that time was that we were not generating sufficient green waste tonnage during the winter months to justify continuing the cost of that service. Residents have been quite comfortable with managing that policy change, and when we went out to consultation with this proposal during the past couple of months, we have had an overwhelming no, that residents are not willing to pay for this service. So as a result of that, we've had a look at what uptake figures we are likely to have for this service. And basically, the service, it just doesn't stack up in terms of the cost that we would have to outlay to provide the winter green waste service against the charges we are likely to get back. It just wouldn't be cost effective at all. So what we're proposing is that we don't charge for winter green waste collections. But obviously that £91,000 that we were anticipating in the budget as additional income coming into the department has to be offset. What I'm proposing in this report is that £91,000 is offset by the interim residual waste contract that we have. We've retendered that contract and we've had very good rates, which has actually generated a budget saving. So what I'm proposing in this report is that that budget saving is used to offset this £91,000 that we were anticipating we would get from introducing this charge. And also, again, in direct response from feedback we've had from members and also residents, the green waste suspension of that service for the next 12 months, we are proposing that the service is suspended from early December to the end of March, because feedback we had from residents is that they felt that stopping the green waste service from early November to early March wasn't sufficient time to account for the people managing their gardens. So as a direct result of citizen feedback and member feedback, we're proposing to change the green waste suspension from early December to the end of March. Thank you.
I agree with that. Any comments?
Yeah, I think as Christina said, I think members were very forceful about that. I think when we discussed this one time before, that we should put it back because autumn really wasn't over at that time. So take that into consideration. But we're in a situation now where our residents now are expecting us to stop the green bin, because lots of people say, when are we stopping the green bins, John? And so they are expecting it now, and they've conditioned themselves to it. So it won't be such a heavy task this time. Try to move it.
Any comments? All agree with the recommendation? Thanks so much. Now then, at this stage, then we're going to put this additional item in, the water contract for waste compactor. Christine. Monitoring officer, is that okay? Yeah?
Yes, fine, thank you, Leader.
Thank you, Leader. You'd be pleased to know it's my last report. I think we've had a lot of waste management this morning. This report relates to the household waste recycling centre that we have. At the household waste recycling centre, we have 2 compactors. One of them was replaced quite recently, and we're now in a position where we need to replace the other. So we've undertaken a tendering exercise using a cost-quality framework. And the proposal is to award the contract to Tenderer 1, which is outlined in 5.3, at a cost of £157,533, and that cost will be funded through a finance leasing arrangement, which is likely to be repaid over a 10-year period at a cost of approximately £20,000 per annum, and this will be funded through a neighbourhood services budget. Thank you, Leader.
Thanks for that. Any comment of anybody? All agreed? Thanks so much. Right. Show. Thanks so much. Thanks so much, Edwina. I now need to exclude the press and the public.
Chair, Leader, would it help if I explained for the purposes of the webcasting?
Yeah, you carry on.
Fine. Normally, most of our reports are open to the press and the public, but occasionally they are exempt. And the next report before Cabinet has a recommendation that the report be exempt, and it sets out in summary at the top of there that it's because of financial and business affairs which are considered to outweigh the interest in making the report open at this stage. So if members would consider that recommendation, and if they agree, then members of the press and public would be asked to withdraw, and at that stage the webcast would end. Thank you. Thank you, Leader.
Duncan, apologies.